comes out very genuine. And I mean, you helped me realize connections and strengths that I didn't even know were there.
Hey there, LinkedIn friends. I just finished a really great hero's journey experience with my friend Matt Mclaughlin, conscious leadership coach, and I want to tell you about his story. I, I'm this one is, I mean, they're also near and dear to my heart, but this one really impacts me because Matt started his life in the Northeast, where he grew up in a small town on the coast. And every single day of his childhood, from the beginning of May until the end of August, Matt would swim in the ocean. And that had a profound impact on him. I mean, think about it. It would have a profound impact on anyone. Learning to be comfortable in enormous depths of water, navigating around jellyfish and tides and even sharks. But to have a relationship with an, an entity of the size and the enormousness and vastness and life of the ocean is a truly extraordinary thing. And from that experience, Matt learned how to know his limits, understand and respect the ocean, and how to navigate and play and have an embodied experience of being able to see and be aware of all of these different things and yet be completely present to his own embodied experience. And there's something about that that really forges something inside of us. And so growing up, Matt had a really secure relationship with himself because of his relationship with the ocean. And yet what was missing for him was the strong male role model who was forging his own courageous path of success in the world. And for Matt, that was his father. His father had a job that he didn't like, but it allowed him to take care of the family. And that's what a lot of men did. They gave up their dreams to take the job, to make the money. And yet so many of them lived in a field of complaint, of victimhood, of begrudgingly going to their work each day. And that also has, an impact on kids. And it had an impact on Matt because he grew up without a role model for what it looks like to love their life, to have a job that inspires them, to feel that they are connected and inspired by their own purpose. And so later in life, decades later, here's this kid that Matt was who had this profoundly secure relationship with himself, and yet having so many layers that had been put on top of that, layers of this is how work looks like, this is how life looks like, this is how relationships look like. And the weight of all of these layers on top of who he really was, because these layers weren't who he was. Who he really was just this vast, secure, dropped-in being. And so that resulted in panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And right, Matt, I mean, it was not even being able to go out of the house for like 6 months at one point.
Yeah, it got really bad.
And that was the breakdown that led to the breakthrough. Because from that experience, Matt dove into meditation and learning to meditate, and actually found that from his experience of being in the ocean, of being able to be aware of all of these different elements and yet stay totally connected to himself, because it's a life and death situation, he had that forged inside of his body, inside of his bones. And so when he started to learn to meditate, he found that over time he was able to separate his thoughts from who he was. He could see his thoughts there and yet not engage them and do what he really wanted to do instead, which, in ways it started to become a superpower. Matt started to realize that when he started to awaken to this level of realization that he could let the thoughts be and make the choices that he really wanted to make, he started to realize that really successful people were already doing this. They had all the same thoughts of doubts and fears and insecurities that we do. They just weren't engaging them and making the choices that they really wanted to make. And at the same time, looking around the world and seeing so many other people completely just lost and drowning in their own thoughts because they were so engaged with those thoughts. And so from that experience and over the years that Matt has really been cultivating this, he's cultivated an ability to help people separate from their thoughts so that they can engage with themselves and really come into their power, into their potency, into their purpose in the world. And that is a huge part of what Matt does today. And so if you find yourself drowning in your thoughts, cycling in your thoughts, and there's got to be something better than this, well, there is. And Matt has figured out the difference that makes the difference. And so if this resonates with you, and I'm talking, you may not have grown up with positive role models. You may not have grown up feeling permission to really do what you want to do in the world. And you want that freedom, then Matt is a fantastic person to have a conversation with about that. And because he comes from having this experience so embodied and he's so passionate about what he does and he's fought for that freedom for himself, he's passionate about helping other people to find the path to that as well. So I just highly recommend reaching out to Matt if his story resonates with you.
What you're giving people is a way to talk about themselves in a way that's really hard to access any other way. It's very autobiographical and it comes out very genuine. And I mean, you helped me realize connections and strengths that I didn't even know were there. So it's a very unique way of presenting yourself, and then the personal growth on the, as well, is huge. The self-realization parts of it. Yeah, very powerful. I think for anyone that's in the business of promoting themselves, whether they're a coach or an author or consultant, that this work really connects your strengths and what you bring individually to whatever work you're doing with who you are, like deeply and intrinsically. So for me, it made this really deep connection of why I enjoy what I'm doing, and gave me a way to speak to that and to really authentically tell potential clients and people that I work with what I bring and why. And that's very powerful.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. And again, if Matt's story resonates with you, if you feel that what he's talking about is something that really has meaning to you, then reach out to Matt for a conversation. I highly recommend it. And if you feel inspired to have your own hero's journey experience and get the kind of clarity that you see other people getting here, then you can reach out to me through my website, thesatorieffect.net, and you can sign up for a 25-minute conversation with me, and we'll see if it's a match for you and go from there. All right. Great to be here with you, Matt.
Thanks, Garrison.